Welcome along, everybody. This is the one. It's race 3 of the weekend for the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. And it's the big one because the winner of this event will be crowned 2018 Po Grand Prix winner. To add their list, the long line of historic names and famous names that have been victorious here since this street race around the circuit of Po. Just underneath the Pyrenees Mountains here in France, was first established back in 1930. As you can see from the pictures, we've had some rain, but whether it's going to stay wet, dry up or get worse, who knows? That's the grid that you're going to see lining up fairly shortly with rookie driver, British Formula 3 champion from last year, Ahmed, starting the race from pole position. The grid there, go through it in more detail in the build-up to the race, is based on the qualifying session in wet conditions that we had yesterday afternoon, and each driver's best second fastest lap time is what sets the grid for this one. So the fastest lap time from that session goes to the grid for the earlier race 2, and everybody's second best lap time is recorded, and that lines up the grid for this one. And Ahmed by a couple of tenths of a second, ending up on pole position with the best lap time in those conditions yesterday of 1 minute 24.138 seconds. In the dry earlier on, we were down into the 1 minute 10s, so that shows you just how tricky it was out there on the circuit. Then a helicopter flying past over the grid as it lines up here. Rain was forecast, showers this morning, which never really materialised. We had 1 or 2 spots of rain, and it was much sunnier than everybody particularly expected. We were really on for and prepared for another fully wet day today. However, that hasn't happened until around about 2:30, so 50 minutes ago, something like that, where it just started to spot with rain, and we've had not a heavy amount of rain, but enough to dampen the track. So it's going to be a damp circuit to start with. Is anybody going to be brave enough to gamble on dries, though? Because it's got a lot warmer here as the day has gone on, and that track could dry fairly rapidly. But on slick tyres, even the most minute amount of problem on the circuit in terms of moisture is going to give you massive headache on the Hankook slick tyres. But some, I think, will gamble for it. It's a bit 50-50. Certainly their slick tyres on the pole sitter's car in Ahmed. There he is. Victorious in 13 of the races last year in the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship, beating a long-held record held previously by none other than the late great Ayet Senna. So he lines up on pole position. Starting alongside him is his teammate on the podium for the first time already earlier on today, and getting the fastest lap in race 2, Alex Palou, the Spanish driver, in for his first season in this race. But a newcomer to Po. All 3 drivers in the high-tech Bullfrog Grand Prix team are newcomers to Po, and at least in Alex's case, he has some experience of circuit racing, even if it's not here, having had a pretty long career so far. He's still a young driver, but he's been in Japanese Formula 3, GP3, F2. Ahmed, the closest thing he's got to having driven around a street circuit is Alton Park in Cheshire, which is a very narrow, undulating circuit where you do get pretty close to the barriers at points around Druids and that section of the course. And actually, I'm saying to me yesterday, there are points around Alton Park where you're actually closer to the barriers than you are here. So it is, for a street circuit, at points relatively wide, and you do have the pavement between the track and the barrier at certain points as well. The big problem is the Fosse Chicane, turn 7, where you absolutely have to go over the curbs to get a quick lap time, and the suspension takes a real pounding. I was speaking to Paul, the engineer for our pole sitter, in the break between races 2 and 3, and he was saying that the car is not particularly tested in terms of the tyres or the brakes around this circuit, but you have to be meticulous in checking the car over, very thorough, very vigilant to look for any damage to particularly the suspension on the car, given how much of a pounding the cars take over the Fosse Chicane. And last year, and in previous years, drivers who look set to win this great race have fallen by the wayside when they have succumbed to suspension damage and been pitched off into the barriers. Lando Norris last year won the championship but didn't win this race. Looked like he was going to until something like that happened to him a few years back. Prior to that, something similar happening to Jake Dennis as well. And we've seen drivers through free practice, qualifying and the races so far this weekend all coming unstuck at that part of the course, and others as well finding it tricky through the left-hander at turn 3, Pont Oscar at the top of the hill. where it's a 90-degree left-hand up, and we saw cars off in the barriers in race 2 earlier on. And one of the drivers that was involved in that was the VAR driver, Van Amersfoort Racing driver, the Russian Artem Petrov, who I saw just after the autograph session, the driver autograph session, which was very well attended, with an ice pack on his hand and wrist. So that obviously stung a bit. Ralph Aron then, he is one of the drivers with the most experience on the grid now in Formula 3, having rejoined us for a 3rd season in the championship. The Estonian, along with his countryman Yuri Vips, being mentored in this championship by former British Formula 3 champion Marco Asma. And there's a real chance here, Ralph Aron. Unfortunately, Yuri's a bit further down the grid, having had an off when he was running well in qualifying yesterday. Great work by Timo Rumpfkarl's team, Motorpark, the German team, to rebuild the car that you've just seen, number 13, Fabio Scherer, who was running in 2nd place and crashed off out of the race in fairly spectacular fashion in race 2 earlier on today. And they worked very quickly to get that car put together. It was a bit of a mess. I asked Timo afterwards, okay, how much damage was there? And he said all four corners had to be repaired. So great work by the team, but they got it done with an hour to spare. There is a driver that's been on the fringe this weekend. He certainly had lots of speed, and had he had a little bit more luck in qualifying 2 yesterday, he may well have been up on the front row of the grid for this one. But it's 5th on the grid for the Indian driver, Jehan Daruvala. He starts in 5th place, the Carlin driver. And Dan Ticktum there, starting in 6th place alongside him, the Red Bull Junior, the British driver who has already picked up a podium this weekend, qualified on pole position for race 1 yesterday, finished in 3rd place, was only 10th on the grid for the 2nd race earlier on today, and sort of hovered around 10th place for most of the race, and then disappeared in the pit lane. And the reason for that apparently was, we saw on the track, one of the cockpit shields had come off onto the circuit, and that was his. So he had to report back to the pits, and the race effectively then was over and done for him. There is Sasha Van Astras, the winner of the race earlier on today. 2 races, 2 different winners so far in the 2018 season, this being the opening round of the Formula 3 Championship. And the French driver, who has lots of family and friends in this part of the world. He knows Po very well indeed. This is very much a home circuit for him, and he's got an awful lot of people here supporting him. After the press conference, walking back to the paddock, it took him a long time to get back into the awning to start debriefing, because he had so many friends and family here who wanted to talk to him, and lots of fans as well getting photographs of Sasha. So a real star of the future, but more work to do from further back on the grid for this one for him. And there is Marcus Armstrong, who got his maiden podium earlier on, the New Zealand driver who only a couple of seasons ago was racing in the RGMMC Rotax Max karting championship, the European Championship, and doing great things in that. Won the Italian Formula 4 Championship last year. And in the press conference, he was asked by René de Boer, who oversees the press conference after each of the races, did you expect to be on the podium this early on in your first weekend? And without any arrogance at all, just complete honesty, he said, well, yes, I did, because I'm quite ambitious, and that's what I expected of myself. And that shows the confidence that these young drivers have to be successful at this level. Jonathan Aberdeen there with a good grid position, starting in 9th place, the South African driver in car number 23. He's another of the Motorpark drivers, the VW powered cars, and alongside him to complete the top 10 is another returnee to the championship, the Japanese driver Marino Sato, the teammate to him for Motorpark. So it's an all high-tech Bullfrog GP front row with Ahmed and Paolo. The second row comprises a Prema car of Ralph Aron, and then Motorpark Fabio Scherer. And it's those teams that really dominate the front portion of the grid. Last year the race was won after, as I say, Lando Norris dropped out, by Max Gunther for Prema. Callum Ilott, his teammate, was second, and Ralph Aron, who is here third on the grid for this one, was on the podium last year for Hi-Tech. He raced with Hi-Tech last year, started his first year with Prema, went to Hi-Tech, and is back with the Prema Theodore Racing team. Tyres. What are you going to do for this one? Wets or dries? Well, so far we've seen up and down the grid mostly slick tyres. There is a car on wet tyres there, Robert Schwartzman, number 10 for Prema Theodore Racing, and that car starting in 11th place. So it could be a race of two halves here. The drivers on the wet tyres, if it stays as it is, and it's just sort of drizzly at the moment, they will have a massive advantage to start with, but they've got to find a way past. And even with the extra grip they'll have, that is going to be difficult. But if it stops raining and it dries up, those wet tyres are going to be next to useless after a few laps once the dry line appears, because they will overheat and they won't perform, and they'll be too grippy through the corners and just a nightmare to drive. So there we see Jonathan Abbott, the Marino Sato car, definitely on wet tyres as well. So it's a bit of a mix up there in the top 10. And even at the moment, tyres are sort of coming up and down, and people are making decisions, late last-minute decisions as to what to go for. So there's a definite mix of tyres there. Number 4 there you see is Mick Schumacher. He's opted for the wet tyre. Prema Theodore Racing driver who is here back for a second season in the championship, having contested Formula 3 for the first time last year off the back of a campaign in Formula 4 championship racing. He finished in 12th place in last year's championship with a podium finish at Monza in round 2. Number 77, Ben Hingley, has gone for the wet tyres as well. So Ben, who had a very good result, 4th place in race 2 earlier on this afternoon, he managed to get his first podium because he was the 3rd highest placed rookie. We've got a high number of rookies coming into the championship this year, and in race 2, 4 of the top 5 are rookies. Alex Palou was the only one that's not classified as a rookie, although in fact this is his first season in Formula 3, in the European Formula 3 Championship at least. But he's not new to Formula 3 because he's raced, as I said, last year to a high level in Japanese Formula 3. There then is how the grid is going to shape up, and this is every race team's nightmare, this sort of in-between dry and wet, damp. Is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Which tyres do we go for? If you're at the back of the field, you might as well have a gamble, take a risk. You've got nothing to lose, really. But for those near the front of the grid, they'll all be caging, keeping an eye on what others are doing. That, I will tell you, though, looking out the window, that rain is pretty consistent. It's not easing up at all, so I would be slightly nervous if I was sticking with the slick tyres for this one. Very nervous indeed, given how close the barriers are and the proximity to disaster if you just run slightly wide anywhere around the circuit. So we saw some drivers at the front of the grid with slick tyres on. There's Timo Rumpfkarl speaking to his driver. Right, drive as quickly as you did in race 2, please, but just don't crash this time, because we don't want to fix the car again. But Fabio Scherer was mighty quick in that first race until disaster struck, and we see how he gets on here from the second row of the grid. He's certainly in the pot. Wet race has been declared, so there is confirmation as the grid is now cleared for what is going to be a 33-minute plus 1 lap race, with all the twists and turns of this 2.7 kilometre long circuit, and all of the twists and turns that we usually get in the final race of the weekend. Palou's on the wet tyres there for sure, and yeah, they've switched on to wets for Inem Ahmed now as well, so I'd be surprised if anybody had stuck with the slick tyres, because that rain worsened since we came on air 10 minutes ago, and you saw some last-minute changes of tyres, and it'd be a brave gamble now to go with the slick tyres. There might be 1 or 2 further down the grid that have had a go at it, but they will be having a real struggle for the first part of the race, and perhaps the whole race, depending on what happens if they have made that decision. Umbrellas up then for what's another large crowd here in the Pyrenees, the mountains overlooking what is a fantastic city, vibrant, full of colour, historic buildings, palm trees, a river not too far to the coast. It's a really beautiful part of France, and a really smart city centre as well, a good mix of new and old, and well worth a visit even if you're not here to watch the racing. So we'll have a look at them on the formation lap now. This is going through turn 2, it's the first real corner. They go through a kink at turn 1, but this is where they hit the brakes for the first time, Virage de la Gare, then they climb uphill, so the exit to Virage de la Gare, which is going to be slippy on those white painted lines all the way around the circuit, on these road circuits. That's going to be tricky. This zebra crossing here, speaking of Marco Asma, this is the reason Yuri Vips went off in qualifying yesterday at this next corner. Didn't really do anything wrong, but you just go over those painted lines and it slips off very easily when you go onto those painted lines. They're so slippery, and it was on the way into Pont Oscar into turn 3 where that drama happened. Otherwise, Yuri would have definitely been up there, because he was on for a shout for pole position up until that point. There is the Red Bull liveried car of Red Bull junior driver Dan Tickton, the British driver, and other drivers with Formula One teams already developing them. Marcus Armstrong, who now lives in Maranello, is telling me about the pretty strict regime that they have every single day of the week in terms of going to the gym and all the fitness training they have to do and all of the other things that you don't think about necessarily that racing drivers have to do away from the car to become the all-round package, the all-round racing driver. Guan Yu Zhu is another on the Ferrari Driver Academy programme and has been for a couple of seasons now. And there's Sacha Panastris in the Renault Sport Academy colour scheme, the yellow and black colour scheme. He's a driver that is being supported as well by Renault and developed and groomed, ready for a step up at some point in the future, if all goes well, into Formula One. So this really is a hotbed of young talent. We see drivers like in recent years, Lance Stroll, Max Verstappen, Esteban Ocon, Charles Leclerc, Antonio Giovinazzi, all coming through and all making it pretty quickly thereafter into Formula One. Lando Norris on his way surely to Formula One, last year's champion. Carlin, by the way, a team with a very good record here in recent years at this circuit. So we'll see if they can pull something out of the bag. Took a win in 2016 with Alessio Lorandi, and in 2015 with Antonio Giovinazzi in the Giugno I Am with Carlin at fit as it was then, and nearly got the win with Lando Norris last year. But it is a lockout on that front row, as I said, for the high-tech Bullfrog GP team. Inem Ahmed there with what's going to be a long wait on pole position because the field is a bit slow coming to the grid. He's on the right of your picture, number 65. Second on the grid, number 39, Alex Palou. Row 2, number 7, Ralph Aron, and 13, Fabio Scherer. Row 3, Jehan Deruvala, number 9, and 27, Dan Tickton. That is the top 6 on the grid. Chris Hartley here then to talk you through what promises to be a fantastic race. It's the 2018 edition of the Po Grand Prix. The green flag is waved at the back of the field. The red lights come on. The revs rise. And we go racing here in France. Slip sliding off the line. A disastrous start for Alex Palou. He's only just got off the line. And a fantastic start for Ralph Aron, who's got the lead of the race in the Prema car from the second row of the grid. Deruvala's made a good start as well into third position. So drama there off the line. The pole sitter drops back to second place. Oh, into the wall in the background there. One of the Prema cars. Is it Schumacher's just about carried on? No, I think it may have been. In fact, Marcus Armstrong. Schumacher getting around the outside of him as they come into Pont Oscar for the first time. Yellow flags waved because you're not allowed to overtake into this part of the course on lap 1. But it is green flags once they get past turn 4 at Lisi here and climb the hill. So overtaking would be allowed once again. And you can see there, it's damp but not wet. But what a start that was. A rocket ship start from Ralph Aron. And from 5th to 3rd as well for Deruvala, making a tremendous getaway. So drama already here at the start of the race. Disastrous start for Alex Palou, who said to me after race 2 earlier on, everything's good with the car and I'm happy with everything, but I just couldn't get it the start that I wanted. And it hasn't been the start at all that he wanted for this one. Nor for Ahmed, who slips from pole position into second place in the race early doors. So Ralph Aron, having visited the podium last year, would now, thank you very much, like to get to the top step. Car 39 under investigation for grid position. It did look a bit shuffled up, didn't it, as they came onto the grid, and that's Alex Palou, so that will make life even worse for him if he ends up getting a penalty for that. But they come through the top 3 at the end of the first lap of the race. Ralph Aron, Inem Ahmed, Jehan Deruvala, 4th place, Fabio Scherer. Palou is dropping down out of the top 6 even, so Dan Tickton is up to 5th, Schwartzman in 6th place, Schumacher's 7th, Armstrong in 8th, Aberdeen 9th, and Ben Hingley in 10th place as it stands. Alex Palou down in 17th place. Incident between cars 8 and 27 is noted, it says on the screen. So we saw Marcus Armstrong getting a bit too close to comfort to the barriers, and Dan Tickton was obviously the other driver that was involved in that, because those are the 2 drivers being investigated according to the live timing screen. It's 33-minute plus 1 lap race that gets underway in dramatic fashion. They extend under the trees as they go through the left-hander at Casino and this right-hander at Park Beaumont. There is some shelter from the rain, so there are some much drier patches around that very quick part of the circuit. But around the more exposed parts, it's very much dampened through there. Like the left-hander, it is, I'd say, wet rather than damp. So it's a track which is going to change and evolve as the race goes on. It's probably wet over this side of the circuit, isn't it? Right, it's going to replay the start. So out of position possibly for Alex Palou, and then he stumbles off the line. Look at Ralph Aron. Terrific getaway for him. Straight into the lead of the race he went. And then look in the background for Marcus Armstrong in the red Prema car coming in stride shortly. So that was the run through Virage de la Gare for the first time in the race, station corner, and there, running onto the path into the barrier, being forced out wide was Marcus Armstrong in the number 8 car, which is why Mick Schumacher up in the 4 car with the yellow helmet was able to get past him, his teammate, of course. So visibility is going to become an issue for everybody except for the race leader Ralph Aron, because more and more spray coming now, and they all made the right decision, didn't they, going onto the wet tyres last minute, because blimey, if you've been on slick tyres now, you'd have been having an absolute screamer. It's bad enough as it is on these treaded wet tyres with the slippery surface that we have and the spray coming up and those painted white lines. You've got to be 100% focused and concentrated for every last tenth of a second around this racetrack. There is no respite here. Just get one short breather, I suppose, down the start-finish straight. Otherwise, you're working away at the car. There through the chicane, the Foss chicane, which cost him his second place finish earlier on today, is Fabio Scherer, the Swiss driver in the number 13 car for Motor Park. He's trying to chase down Deruvela for the final spot on the podium, but Deruvela getting away from him, the top two getting away from everybody. Ahmed has just set the fastest second sector of the race so far, but it was only 19 thousandths of a second quicker than the race leader, so yes, he closed the gap, but it was by a minute amount. He certainly got the pace of the race leader though. Deruvela going through in third place there, fourth. Scherer, a big gap back then to should be the fifth place car coming up next of the race 2 winner, Sacha van Astres. So on the brakes, into Pont Oscar they come. The gap between the top two is 1.5 seconds. Right, drive-through penalty for number 39, Alex Palou, for an incorrect grid position. So it was a nightmare start to the race. It's just somehow got even worse for him. So already down in 17th, 18th place. He's now 16th. He's made one back up, but he's going to head to the pits for this drive-through penalty. So hopes and aspirations of winning this terrific race have now faded away for him very quickly indeed, and snatched away from him with what was a very messy start, unfortunately. So Ralph Aron continuing to be caught up here bit by bit. Reeling him in is Ahmed. Deruvela just going through shot there in third place in the pink colours of his Carlin Motorsport car. And having to be very careful through the tight chicane. And on the exit here, they get close to the barrier. You understeer there, you get on the power a fraction too earlier, and you're touching the barriers. But you've got to get a good run, you've got to go close to it to get the speed out onto this start-finish straight. So here they come once more. Aron, Ahmed, the gap 1.4 seconds. Deruvela holding station in third, and Scherer in fourth place. Fifth place is across the line now, Dan Tickton, 12 seconds already behind the race leader. Then Schwartzman. Incident between Dan Tickton and Marcus Armstrong is going to be investigated after the race, it says. So Van Astres has dropped way down the order, hasn't he? And yeah, down in a lap down. I think he's come through at all. So race 2 winner and the championship leader is completely out of the running in this one. Van Astres on 37 points after the first 2 races of the season. Vanuccio on 25, yesterday's winner. Marcus Armstrong was tied with him on 25 points, joint second in the championship. Palou was fourth. Ralph Aron in fifth place on 22 points. So he is potentially moving to the top of the championship table here. Ralph Aron, he'll get 25 points. He'll get more points than he's already got. He's only got 22 so far this weekend. So that's going to move him onto 47 points. So potentially could pick up the championship lead here, Ralph Aron. Twitching away on the accelerator, the back end of the car, dancing around as he makes his way through to complete another lap of the race. But it's been a good lap. It might be the fastest lap of the race so far, potentially. Yeah, it is, a 1:23.670. So the gap now out to nearly 1.7 seconds back to Ahmed. Ahmed doing a terrific job though, on his first ever visit to this circuit, his first weekend racing these cars, and should be more proud indeed of the way it's gone. Deruvela likewise going well in these wet conditions in third place. Ahmed is also on for a rookie class win. The next best rookie in fourth place is Scherer, and then it's Robert Schwartzman in sixth place, who's on for a rookie podium as it stands. But there's a long way to go before we can start talking about podiums and trophies in this race, and we know there's usually a twist or two in the tail here at this great race. There is poor old Alex Palou, number 39, who had a terrible start and was out of position on the grid and has been ordered to go into the pit lane for a drive-through penalty. So having started on the front row of the grid, he is having about as much of a nightmare race as you could possibly have. The other end of the spectrum in terms of terrific race starts, there was Ralph Aron. He goes through now, sector 1, 27.3. He was a bit slower than Ahmed actually through that first sector, so the gap comes down by another couple of tenths of a second. However, Ralph responds well in sector 2 by setting the fastest sector 2 time that we've seen so far in the race, and he pulls back 8 tenths of a second through that sector alone. So overall, he's going to continue to grow the gap here as he makes his way through that last kink and back down towards turn 1 to start another lap. Indeed, the gap is out to over 2 seconds now as he makes his way through turn 2 at the Virage de la Gare. Just about staying with him in second place is Ahmed, but you have to wait and wait and wait before you get third place. 6.5 seconds back to Daruvula in third position at the moment. So Ralph Aron leads, Inem Ahmed in second place, Jan Daruvula in third, Fabio Scherer is fourth, Dan Ticktum is in fifth place, Robert Schwartzman sixth, Rick Schumacher in seventh place, Jonathan Aberdeen is eighth, Ben Hinchley in ninth place, Marcus Armstrong is in 10th position. Then 11th we've got just outside the points again. He's been outside the points a couple of times by a narrow amount this weekend. It's Ferdinand Habsburg. Marino Santos dropped out of the top 10 to 12th place. Nikita Troicki is in 13th. Yuri Vips up to 14th place. Guan Yu Zhu, yesterday's winner and the championship leader after round 1, race 1, is 15th currently in the number 1 Prema Theodore racing car. Kevin Andre Sori in 16th. Petrov 17th. Vadi Nathan in 18th. Fernandez 19th. Julian Hanses, who had a good race too, is down in 20th place. Palou 21st. Fenestres down in 22nd place, and Di Francesco at the back of the running has gone into the pits now, so he's 3 laps down. So that's the order as it stands in this race. The lap times continue to be very impressive indeed for Ralph Aron. He's got that gap steadied at around about 2 seconds. Sometimes it's just under, sometimes it's just over. Look at the visibility that these drivers have to try and weave their way through here. If you're in the middle of the pack, you've got a car or two just in front of you, you're just driving on pure instinct around here because there's no way they can see the corners that are coming up. Incredibly difficult for them. Oh, and off, I'm afraid, for Marcus Armstrong. Damage to the front right suspension. That is along the pit straight, and he's not the only one, is he? He was joined there. That could have been Ferdinand Habsburg, I think. A quick flash of the blue and black car. It looked like it might have been the Austrian that was in strife as well. They were pretty close together on the track last time we saw them. So Marcus, who had a terrific run in race 2, has not had a good time of it, I'm afraid, in this one. But the New Zealander has shown a great amount of skill and application this weekend up until that point. Right, try and work this out. Pick them up through the mist. And we're about to get 2 damaged cars. There off is Armstrong. A passenger in that car with absolutely no steering at all. So that was on the exit onto the start finish straight. And it's going to deliver as a safety car. So Ralph Aron, who got a 1.8 second lead, is now going to have Inem Ahmed right with him for the restart. Daruvula, who they had completely dropped, he's going to be up there with them as well. And on the plus side for Ralph Aron, he knows he's quicker than everybody else behind him, or at least he has been. On the negative side, he knows that Inem Ahmed might just have a go here, might sense that his one opportunity might be on the restart. So it adds a bit of unwanted pressure, really, and unwanted stress to our race leader, Ralph Aron, with 2/3 of the race distance still left to run. Getting wetter and wetter and wetter out there, so going around talking to some of the teams earlier on, sort of general consensus was, no, I don't think it is going to rain. Actually, it was forecast, but you looked up at the skies and it was pretty blue. There were 1 or 2 clouds, but it didn't really look like the rain was going to come. But it's so volatile, the weather around here, it changes so quickly, and an hour later and it's a completely different picture. So for the first time in a while, Ralph Aron could see other cars in his mirrors because he'd stretched that lead out very nicely indeed with some terrific driving. Now they're keen to try and keep some heat in the tyres and the brakes ready for what will be a pretty critical restart. So there is Sasha Fenastres At least he'll be onto the back of the pack now, but he's way down the order in 20th place. It'll be interesting to see if he can try and come through the field a little bit though. I suppose there are more opportunities in the wet because drivers make more mistakes, run wide and so forth, so more opportunities I would say in the wet than the dry, but it's still mighty difficult to do that around here. Getting near the points, that would be pretty amazing, I would say. So the Estonian driver, Ralph Aron, leading the field around. Ralph is, with the exception of Guan Yuju, the most experienced European Formula 3 race driver out there now in his 3rd season. This is going to be his 62nd career race. He has had 1 race victory at Hungaroring in his 1st season in 2016. He's had 5 visits to the podium during the last few seasons and a pole position. And some other strong results as well away from that, but slightly disappointing year for him last year. His 2nd year in the championship, it didn't quite work out for him when we all expected him to go forward, finishing in 9th place in the end. Although he did have really his highlight weekend was here at Po, where he finished in the top 5 in all 3 races, including the visit to the podium and 3rd place at the end of that weekend. He followed it, unfortunately, with a pretty bad weekend at the Hungaroring, which is where we go next for the championship. Rounds 4, 5 and 6 of this year's championship will be the first weekend of June at the wonderful Hungaroring in another glorious city, Budapest. Then we go to another street circuit. A few weeks after that, the 23rd and 24th of June, it's to the Norris Ring in Germany. And then something completely different if we go to Zandvoort in Holland, the coastal circuit there, 14th and 15th of July. They've got Spa-Francorchamps, Silverstone, Misano this year on the calendar, Nürburgring, Spielberg, and then Hockenheim to come for the rest of the season. 10 rounds, 30 races in the championship. And it looks like we could open the season, what promises to be a very open, wide open championship season with 3 different race winners. Guan Yuju winning yesterday, Ralph Aron 2nd, Dan Titsum in 3rd, and then the 2nd race of the weekend earlier on, we had the victory for Sacha Van Astres, Alex Palou in 2nd, and Marcus Armstrong in 3rd place. So far, not a single driver has been on the podium twice this weekend. Ralph Aron might be about to change that, and he might be about to go to the very top step of the podium, but he knows he's got his work cut out. I mean, taking away the rest of the field and what they might try and do about him, he's just got to beat the track as well in this and not make any mistakes. So, safety car leading them round, backed up the pace a little bit here. Is it going to be coming in soon? Lights are still on at the moment, and they're getting towards the end of the lap as they come down into the final chicane. So I would suggest probably another lap behind the safety car. Some drivers out there will see this, look how wet it is there. Some drivers out there will see this as an opportunity. Other drivers will see this as a potential hazard, this safety car restart. Don't envy the drivers that are there in 14th, 15th, 16th places when you get to the restart. Look at the amount of spray there is now, and they are going around at sort of 30% their normal speed. So when they're going full chat on the restart, they're all bunched up together. It's just going to be a wall of spray. It's going to be like trying to drive through the fog. Shame for the spectators who've turned out in their droves for this event this weekend as well. This Parkland set-in, but it was a real good buzz. The Formula 3 autograph sessions are always really well supported, and the drivers took a lot of time out to sign autographs, sign posters, and meet the fans. The fans are well aware, knowledgeable fans, that there's a good chance that they'll look at those autographs and signatures and get their programs out in a few years' time, and be able to come up with quite a long list of drivers that have now made it as professional racing drivers, be it in Formula 1 or in other single-seater categories internationally, or in GT and sports car racing. Bright futures await most of these young drivers, still in the early stages of their careers. Most of them 17, 18, 19 years of age, but already with a lot of experience, having gained that initial racecraft and development of setup through their years in karting, both nationally and internationally. And of course, most of them have come up and had a couple of seasons in competitive single-seater championships like Formula 4 and Formula Renault Euro Cup before coming into this championship. Well, it's been about 6 or 7 minutes behind the safety car now, but we did see Marcus Armstrong's car being winched up. To confirm as well, by the way, it was, I mentioned it probably was, the Ferdinand Habsburg car that we also saw off in strife at the same time. And Ferdinand indeed down in 22nd position and out of the running now. So we lost to Francesco early on, into the pits he went. We lost Habsburg, and we've now lost Armstrong. 20 cars still running. Ralph Aron, Inem Ahmed and Jehan Daruvla on the podium positions. A sad sight there as the Prema Theodore racing car of Marcus Armstrong, who's been twice in the top 6 so far this weekend, including that visit to the podium earlier on today. He's not going to score any points in this one, but the odds are that they're all, at some point or another, going to have a bad race or two. So it's about the consistency in this championship, and the mature drivers will know that you can't win every race. You can't try to win every race. That's where you're going to come unstuck. So sometimes you have to accept just picking up the points. And if you can keep finishing, get some wins, but keep finishing in the top 5 on a regular basis, you've got a very good chance of being in the championship fight come the end of the season. So no confirmation yet, but wouldn't be surprised if we were able to get things back underway at the end of this lap. Certainly the clear-up operation looked like it was underway. I suppose the only other question is how wet it's getting out there now, whether that might become an issue for the race officials and the drivers. Under the bridge, which has got the only dry bit of circuit left around these 2.7 kilometres to the left of the track. Just underneath that bridge is the only bit that's been sheltered from the rain. Wet here, you can see the climb. Great corner, this right-hander at Lisi. Very tight, very tricky. You want to get on the power as quickly as possible, though, because it's then dry conditions, at least a flat-out run through this rapid left-hander through Casino. And you fire yourself, hope the downforce and the grip from the tyres allows you to stick to the circuit through Park Beaumont. It's a wonderful view. There you can see the park in the background and how close you can get to the track. Come and bring a picnic, watch the racing, but he points here where you get right by the track. Now, red flag. The race is going to be suspended. So, yes, the incident has been cleared, as we saw, but as I feared, because of the worsening conditions and the visibility, which is definitely going to be an issue, the race has been suspended. So it is going to be, I'm afraid, a red flag for the time being. The clock will stop with just under 13 minutes left on it, but these cars now are, for the time being, going to be brought to a halt, and they're going to have to wait and see what happens with the weather conditions. So unfortunate, having had a pretty nice day up until this point, that the rain decided to come just as we started this most important race of the weekend. You can see there the sort of surface water as well, and a bit of a stream running across parts of the circuit here. Of course, it's not designed as a racetrack, and modern day racetracks have excellent drainage, but that's not necessarily the case at every part of this circuit, especially because it's so undulating, it's so up and down, that at the lower points of the circuit the water can gather. So the old Pyrenees weather has made us come unstuck a little bit here with this race. The cars are being sent back off the track, back to the pit lane, and as it stands, Ralph Aron leading the way, but we're not yet at 75% race distance, so the race suspended rather than declared as a result for now. Any news we get, of course, I'll bring you straight away once we get the information from race control as to exactly what's happening, but they quite rightly, I think, have decided that this is perhaps a bit, you can see how much it's raining now, a little bit too dangerous to continue, bearing in mind that these are very young racing drivers as well. So the race stopped here in round 3 of the championship. I told you there's always a bit of drama in this third race of the weekend at the Pau Grand Prix, and it's the weather that's delivered it this time. We already had that very lively start to the race. The marshals all getting soaked out there. The rain is bouncing off the track now as well, so it is I think a sensible decision to bring things to a halt. So there you see the picturesque setting that we have here, which even in the rain looks pretty nice, but looks even better when we get the sunshine. But that track is with a lot of surface water, and you saw how much spray there was when they were going around behind the safety car. So at full chat, it would be a wall of water There is the zebra liveried colour scheme of the number 18 car, the sole car run by the Macon Racing team. And that's German driver Julian Hanses, the tall, blonde-haired German driver, who had a good run in race 2 to finish in 7th place and was in the top 5 in the rookies. So the teams now go to the drivers and keep them informed as to what's going on. Most importantly, they want to try to keep the drivers dry, I think, by getting the umbrellas over the cockpits. So teams will be there, but not allowed to be working on the cars because it's still under race conditions. The race is still effectively underway. It's suspended, but it's part of firming conditions, so they're not going to be able to make any changes or updates to the cars as it stands. The crowd's trying to run for cover at the moment. This is the view uphill into the tight left-hander at Pont Oscar, which then leads to this 4th turn at Lisi. There's arduous fans there. Many of them stayed behind last night as well. We had GT4 racing here last night, some tin top racing. There's always a night race on the Saturday at Pau. And it was pretty wet at one point last night. Probably not quite this wet, but they stayed and watched the racing, many of them, and enjoyed some good action in the GTs. So they can see the camber on some of the corners as well, where the water can gather. Number 7 there, your race leader before the race was suspended, Ralph Aron, sits in the car. It's really difficult for the drivers as well because they have been in the zone, racing away, completely, fully concentrated on what they're doing. The adrenaline's been flowing. And you know what happens once adrenaline flows away. You start to sort of deflate and feel a bit tired and you switch off a bit. And the drivers can't do that. They've got to keep themselves focused and alert to get back out there. So it's a real test, this, for the drivers. Teams will do their best to keep them informed. Ralph Aron, the driver leading the race and potentially looking to, with this result, move into the championship lead. One of 2 very quick young Estonian drivers that we have in the field, with Yuri Vips being the other one. Ralph from Tallinn is 20 years of age and finished 3rd at Macau as well, the end of last season. A dramatic race there, where he just about popped onto the podium at the end of the race when the top 2 took each other out. Dan Tickton came through to win, and up onto the podium was Ralph Aron. He finished 9th in this championship last year. In fact, there was a disappointment, having on his first season had a very strong rookie year in 2016 when he finished in 7th place with the Prema Power team. Prior to that, he raced in Formula 4, was the Italian Formula 4 champion back in 2015. And 2014 was his first real season of car racing, where he had a busy year. He raced in the Formula Renault Northern European Championship, the Northern European Zone Series, and the Formula Renault Swedish Championship, and was a runner-up in 2 of those championships. There is the Ruvela there in the car. Tyre pressures being checked by the teams here. About all they can do, really, to make a difference to the cars. Having had to sort of throw the setup on and guess, I would imagine a lot of the drivers have gone with a dry setup just with wet tyres on, so it's not that the cars are ideally suited to these conditions, given how late in the day it began to rain. A quick shot of Dan Tickton, who made an immediate impression in this championship with his maiden pole position in his maiden qualifying session in the dry on Friday. The 18-year-old from London, who came through the Formula Renault Euro Cup last year and dual campaign in GP3 as well. Finished 7th in Renault, 11th in the GP3 Championship, and as I said, won the FIA Formula 3 World Cup, which is the Macau Grand Prix. Went from 5th to 3rd with a good move in the middle of the race, and then went from 3rd to 1st at the last corner after Sergio Sette Camara and Ferdinand Habsburg, who's racing here with us this weekend, collided. Lando Norris, last year's European champion, and Ralph Aron, the other drivers to finish on the podium. Habsburg limped over the line to finish in 4th place. There then a run up the grid in the pit lane, this makeshift pit lane that we have here. One of the great joys and nuances of this circuit, as our marshals try to get themselves dry in innovative fashion with some of the boards, full course yellow boards proving quite handy. One in the background's got it perfectly balanced on his head, look. But one of the great joys of this venue is how it transforms into a racetrack, and everything's a little bit makeshift. It's part of the charm of the event. For example, the press conference for the Formula 3 championships this weekend is at the back of the paddock the outer paddock, not the Formula 3 paddock, where you have to go through a rather nice shop and walk through to the back of the shop, and there is a room that has been transformed into the press conference with Formula 3 backdrops. He's having a good time there, try to keep dry. He's got a big enough umbrella, and he's decided to have a sit down because it doesn't look like things are going to get underway anytime soon, does it? The water absolutely pouring off the bridge here. There, the view into this right-hander at the Gar, and there some of the reason that we've had to suspend this race. The water forming little streams now down parts of the course. It's dripping off the pit lane paddock building as well, isn't it, to pour onto not just the spectators and officials, but the teams as well. You can tell the British team members, because they're the ones with shorts on, who think it's hot, like me, going around in short sleeve shirts, because, you know, up until the rain came, it's pretty hot for us. Everybody else thinks it's cold. But for the British drivers and team members and commentators, it's been quite a nice day by our standards until now. Spare a thought for the camera ops as well, who are getting a bit of a soaking out there on the track. So ponchos out, photographers trying to keep equipment dry somehow. There's some of the Carlin team members trying to stay alert and awake. And no news yet as to when the action is likely to get back underway. What I can give you is the pictures I'm giving you and the view out of my window to tell you if that rain is easing or not. But I don't think it likely is. Looks like the rain is going to be here with us for a while, unfortunately. Certainly some puddles forming down there in the pit lane there. There is Alex Palou, the 39 car, and number 11, Sasha Fenastres, who've already had a bit of a miserable race. Sasha's a pretty smiley, happy, bubbly character, though, and even though he hasn't had the race that he wanted to here, with a bad start to the race, he still waves and smiles to the camera. Is very likeable, the driver, who up until this point has had a fantastic weekend. So teams on the radios, they'll be the first to hear from the officials once there is news, and they'll be able to deliver that to the drivers, and we'll be able to deliver it to you as well. But some of the drivers now out of the cars, so there is Ralph Aron, who has made the decision that he doesn't need to stay in the car. So it doesn't look imminent, does it, when that sort of thing happens? Opting to stay in his car is Julian Hanses. Opting to run for cover are some of the spectators. Well, not run, but shuffle. It is, though, at least there are plenty of opportunities at the street circuit to keep dry, because the town's not far away. The shops and restaurants will always welcome you in. But more and more drivers now, it seems, getting out of the cars. Had enough of sitting there, getting cold and wet, and that makes me think that the information has been coming through that, you know, actually it might be a while yet, so you might want to get out of the cars. So a real shame, what promised to be the highlight of the weekend, which has given us a very interesting start to the race, with some drivers shuffled back down the order, others charging through, has come to this race suspended halt due to the weather. But as you'll appreciate, this is out of the hands of everybody, really. It's one of those things that you can't control. All you can do is make the most of it and make the most sensible and safe decisions, because it's the safety of the drivers which is paramount at the end of the day. So until we find that out, we'll just have to keep waiting and watching to find out what happens. As I say, though, it was a very lively start to the race up until the point that the red flags came out. The red flags preceded, of course, by that crash into the barriers over the start-finish line for Marcus Armstrong. Ferdinand Habsburg was also tangled up in a track where there was a very limited amount of vision, I'm afraid. Look back at the back of the Van Amersfoort racing car of Artem Petrov there, the Dutch team, who had a difficult weekend so far. The Russian driver who had an off in qualifying yesterday in the wet. He had an off into the barriers at Pont Oscar in race 2 as well. So it's been a tough weekend for VAR. A few seasons ago, had a terrific season with the Dutch driver Max Verstappen third in the championship standings. Right, while we're waiting, let's get a look at some of the highlights then that we've had so far from this race. And there was the super start for third man on the grid, Ralph Aron, and you can see just how different the track was at the start of this race. He got the lead away from the pole sitter, Ahmed. Up to third place from fifth on the grid was Jehan Daruvala. There, already in the wars over the pavement and into the barriers, was Marcus Armstrong. He dropped back down the order. His teammate with the yellow helmet there, Mick Schumacher, coming through. The weather quickly worsened though, and that was Marcus Armstrong just before the red flags came out, clattering into the barriers. He's okay, but damage to the right side, puncture to the right rear, damage to the front left suspension as well. Ralph Aron is a driver that will be absolutely delighted he got to the front of that field the way he did. The one that had the bad start was Alex Palou, who dropped right down the order, and then for an incorrect grid position was asked to go for a drive-through penalty as well. The car of Marcus Armstrong was removed, but we never got the safety car start back underway because while the safety car was out, the weather got worse and worse and worse, and the officials and the FIA took the decision that it was unsafe to continue, and that was why the race was therefore suspended 10 or 15 minutes ago. A real shame for what promised to be a great spectacle and what was at that point an enjoyable race. So as it stands, Ralph Aron, Inem Ahmed and Jehan Daruvala, the three drivers on the 2018 podium, but with the race suspended, and the French fans there, I don't think they're going to get a French winner here in this one, but they've already been treated to that with Sacha Van Astre's excellent drive in the second race of the weekend, which was run earlier on today in much nicer conditions. We had expected rain for quite a lot of today, but certainly showers this morning, but in fact it started off pretty bright and sunny this morning, a little bit chilly, but when we got to the first race at just about 11 o'clock this morning, skies were generally blue and the racetrack was in very good condition, as it was yesterday. It's been a real mix. We've had some wet sessions, some damp sessions this weekend, a couple of dry sessions as well, but this is, I'm afraid, about as wet as it has been so far this weekend. So there's the run up to the right-hander at Park Beaumont Casino. The casino just to the side of the circuit makes it have a real sort of Monte Carlo, Monaco feel with that very nice casino building that we have, and the whole park setting as well, the undulations of the circuit. It is reminiscent in some ways of Monaco. Sacha Van Astre's a winner at Monaco in the Formula Renault Euro Cup, so he's got pedigree when it comes to street circuits, and has at least raced here before, unlike many of the drivers. But it's Ralph Aron, Jehan Daruvala, two of the top three drivers that have been here before, and the only other one there on the podium in his first weekend, Inem Ahmed. Panama Sport Racing Team wait and hold on to see what happens. The rain, though, continues to fall down here at Pau. Right, we're going to get some highlights now from race 2 of the weekend. And Sacha Van Astre's was on pole position. Alex Palou was second on the grid, but didn't get a great start. Better start than he had in race 3, so he dropped back. Around the outside came the driver that was on pole position for this race, Inem Ahmed, had a big go around the outside, but it didn't quite work off, and there was contact between him and his teammate, which allowed Alex Palou to get back up into third spot because it looked like he might be down in 5th position. Sacha Van Astre's had the lead of the race. The driver that shot up the order into second was Fabio Scherer in the motor park car there, and he really did keep the Frenchman honest as they went through on slick tyres, but with damp offline. There was a collision at Pont Oscar between Artem Petrov, number 12, and Devlin Francesco, the Canadian driver in the number 17 car, which brought about yellow flags and a safety car inevitably, and both drivers were okay, although Artem, as I said, was going round with an ice pack on his race after that incident, but he's been able to get back into the cockpit for this race. So the marshals are doing their job as ever really well here, and on the scene quickly to deal with the cars. With Francesco's car was moving swiftly. A bit more work to do with the VAR car because the front wing had become dislodged, but we got back underway, and Fabio Scherer then had a massive go around the outside here for the lead of the race at Gar Corner, but it couldn't come through. The sun was glistening through. The track was getting in better and better condition at this stage of the race. Alex Palou hanging on to third spot on the run up towards the left-hander at the Gar, though that was when Van Astre started to get away through the Foss chicane, thumping the curbs in the dry conditions. Van Astre is telling me after the race how much he uses the pavement here, and then Scherer sort of had a go here. I'm not sure if he was having a go to try and get the lead of the race, or if he just was caught out by the braking of the race leader for Astres and had to dive to the inside at the last second, but then he did make contact with the leader, and then he made this contact with the barrier at Foch, and a big off, I'm afraid, to put him out of the race from second place. Alex Palou and Marcus Armstrong just about avoiding him, and the victory, his first in Formula 3 for race 2 earlier on today, went the way of Sacha Van Astres. Alex Palou in second, Marcus Armstrong third. The Carlin Motorsport boys and girls very happy indeed with the performance of their new star driver, or one of them, because they've got a good lineup here this year. So there were the highlights of race 2, and getting news now that the race will not be resumed. The race is not going to be resumed, and therefore Ralph Aron will be claimed victor of the 2018 Po GP, with Inam Ahmed second on his debut, Jehan Daruvala third and on the podium. They were the top 3 before the race was suspended, and the decision has now been made that with the conditions not improving at all, that will be declared a race result. So Ralph Aron winning from Inam Ahmed, Jehan Daruvala, Fabio Scherer 4th, Dan Ticktum 5th, Robert Schwartzman in 6th place, Mick Schumacher in 7th, Jonathan Aberdeen 8th, Ben Hingley 9th, Marino Sato in 10th, the final points finisher, and then Nikita Troicki classified 11th, Yuri Vips 12th, Guan Yu Zhu 13th, Kevin Andresori 14th, Artem Petrov 15th, Wadi Nathan 16th, Fernandez 17th, Hanses 18th, Palou 19th, Van Astres 20th, and out of the race, retiring for Armstrong, Habsburg, and early on in the race, Di Francesco. So, under slightly disappointing circumstances, I'm afraid, we end the race action from the Po GP. But I think one driver that won't care a jot is Ralph Aron. He would have liked to see that checkered flag, liked to have had his moment in the sun, I was going to say. That's probably not the right phrase, is it, given the conditions? However, all that matters is that his name now gets added to that list of Formula 1 greats that have won here in the past. Ralph Aron will have his name on the trophy. He will be able to add that to his CV. It'll go quite near the top because he is now a Po GP winner, and that's Ralph's second career victory in the FIA European Formula 3 Championship on his 62nd race, and I reckon it will also move him into the championship lead. It's to be determined whether or not there'll be full points awarded for that race. If there are, he will move into the lead. If it's half points, then that might not be the case. But Ralph Aron, anyway, has had a terrific weekend with that second place finish yesterday. The excellent move to get second place with Dan Ticktum, those two battling away. That's a move to remember for a while. And a superb weekend as well for Inam Ahmed, who started his weekend with difficulties in free practice, but overcame them, learnt the track as he went in qualifying, got a solid 6th place finish in race 1. That was good enough for a rookie podium, third best rookie in that one. And then he had another top 6 finish, 5th in race 2. And he also has now got a full-on second place, proper podium here. I'll be slightly bittersweet, I suppose, because he started on pole position. But you know what? If you'd said to him at the start of the weekend, you'll get 3 top 6 finishes and you'll get a podium in the last race of the weekend, I think he would have probably settled for that. They all want to win races, of course, but it's a very good start for Inam. I think the British driver, they'll be well pleased. And Jen Daruvala as well, I think probably deserving a podium this weekend. As I said, he's been on the fringe. Hadn't quite worked out for him so far this weekend, but he's been very quick. Had much damage to the car as well after yesterday's action, which the team had to work hard to fix. So it's credit to them that they're able to get the car as quick as they did for what was a good drive in those wet conditions as well. It was a very solid third before the red flags came out. But you can see the reason why we had to suspend the race. We are, I think, going to get the podium presentation, so a chance before we go off air to see Ralph Aron lifting the famous trophy here at this most famous street circuit. As I say, we got the Hungaro Ring to come on the 2nd and 3rd of June for another 3 races, rounds 4, 5 and 6 to Budapest, and then to the Norris Ring for a very different kind of street circuit, and that's another very historic venue as well. But one of the street circuits where there's usually quite a lot of overtaking and slipstreaming and last-minute braking. That's on the 23rd and 24th of June. Zandvoort is on the 14th and 15th mighty quick at in sectors, that coastal circuit, a proper old school circuit through the dunes in Holland, and then to the famous Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, one of the world's most famous and greatest racetracks, on the 27th and 28th of July, to Silverstone in the UK on the 18th and 19th, another Formula One Grand Prix track. Return to Misano in Italy for the 7th round of the championship on the 25th and 26th of August, and then the Nürburgring, Spielberg and Hockenheim, 3 more Grand Prix circuits. So all very useful for these drivers who, many of them aspire to be Formula One drivers one day. Those are the last 3 rounds of what's going to be another 30 race championship season. There, the river that flows down from the Pyrenees Mountains through the city of Pau, and which you have to cross to get from the Formula 3 paddock, across the bridge to get over the track, then across another bridge to get over the river to the media centre and the outer paddock where some of the support race series are based. The locals have come well prepared with hats and umbrellas and waterproofs, unlike me. I forgot to bring my coat with me, but I've now purchased an umbrella this weekend, and that proved to be €10 well spent, I think, because I might be getting it out on the way back from the commentary box at the end of this. So 3 races and 3 different winners at the start of what is going to be a wide open 2018 season. Guan Yu Zhu, Sacha Van Astres and Ralph Aron, all victors this weekend, and we've already had 8 drivers on the podium this year. The only driver to be on the podium twice in terms of overall podiums, Ralph Aron, who had a 2nd place finish in race 1 yesterday. So it really just justifies the conversation we had at the start of the weekend about this being a very, very competitive season, potentially. Confirmation of the race results then, with the race suspended with just under 13 minutes to go because of the weather. So Ralph Aron, the winner, after 11 laps. Inem Ahmed in 2nd, Jen Deruvela in 3rd place, 4th for Fabio Scherer, 5th Dan Ticktum, 6th Robert Schwartzman, Mick Schumacher 7th, Jonathan Aberdeen 8th, Ben Hingley 9th, Marino Sato in 10th place. They can see the 3 drivers that DNF'd: Armstrong, Habsburg and Di Francesco. So there is the podium, and to their credit, even though the weather's not great, lots of people have made it to cheer on the drivers onto the podium. And leaping for joy, Ralph Aron is a race winner at the Pau GP for the Prema Theodore Racing Team, the Italian team. And there in 2nd place for the high-tech Bullfrog GP team, Inem Ahmed takes his first full podium in his first full weekend in the European Formula 3 Championship. And Jehan Deruvela is also up onto the podium for the first time this season. So Jehan with a good drive through. The Estonian on the top step of the podium, 2nd place going the way of the British driver, and an Indian driver in 3rd. We also had in the top 10 a Swiss driver, a Russian driver, a German driver, a South African and a Japanese driver. It's a truly international championship, but now it's the Estonian national anthem. An incredibly proud moment for Ralph Aron, probably the proudest moment of his career so far, and he throws his hat into the ring as championship contender. We now get the trophies awarded, umbrellas present this time as well, and hearty congratulations to our race winner. Ralph Aron lifts the silverware aloft, points to the skies, number 1 he says, and he takes his best career win so far. Another trophy to add to the probably thousands that they've got now at Prema, the defending team's champions. And well done to Inem Ahmed. He has made his mark and an impact on the championship already. Another driver to look out for, I'm sure, with a really bright future. Terrific. Well done, Inem. That was a very strong drive. And pole position, of course, for him as well already. And Jehan Deruvela, back for his 2nd season in Formula 3, being the runner-up in the rookie standings last year. After at times a testing weekend, gets his just rewards and a well-deserved podium for Jehan as well. So good drives by all 3 of those in really, really testing conditions. and changeable conditions. So that is just about wrapping up our coverage from Po. Well done to our 3 winners this week. And Guan Yu Zhu, Sasha Fenastres, and now Ralph Aron, the Po GP winner of 2018. The Hungaro Ring next in a couple of weekends' time. But for now, from me, Chris Hartley, and the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.